Rambod Hashemi. I was born in Iran, and in 1979 my family and I emigrated from Tehran to Fargo, North Dakota, the middle of December. So this was quite an abrupt transition. I was 10 years old then. And there were very few, if any, foreign kids in my school, and I didn't speak a word of English. Remember, the first word I learned was chair, because they wanted me to sit down. I remember sitting in class and understanding nothing, watching other kids laugh and respond while I stayed quiet. So being so different was difficult, and it was also very isolating. It's interesting because for me, this presented a challenge and an opportunity at the same time. I remember teachers pulling me aside, sitting with me one-on-one, and helping me sound out words. I got special attention. I learned to speak English in a couple of months. I was a special case for them. This was amazing. That extra attention helped me a lot. Looking back, I can see how both the struggle and the care of the people at that time shaped me. Because now I realize that even before I had the language, that experience lived in my body. I learned how to stay alert, how to read the room, adapt quickly, a sense of vigilance, needing to adjust in order to belong. It's a pattern that has followed me into who I am today. I'm a director of operations for a real estate company. It's a fast-paced, high-stress environment, and the role has constant responsibility. So, there are days filled with urgent emails and things I need to do. But I think back often to the 10-year-old in me that learned how to be vigilant under stress and how to do and say the right thing to survive. For a long time, this way of coping worked for me until it didn't. 4 years ago, I was introduced to mind-body medicine, and it's been transformative for me at the level of my personal life, my inner life, my family, and my work. As the head of operations in my company, I had programs with youth in the community. This was pre-COVID, and I was juggling that while juggling my work, and my boss, the president of our company, pulled me aside one day and said, "You're doing well, but you're not. I don't think you're going to last more than 5 years." I said, "In this job?" She says, "No, on this planet." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, I want you to study mind-body medicine." She has studied it, and she said to me, "I think you're going to be able to help yourself and a lot of other people. And in the future, I see maybe you doing this full-time for us." I was surprised. I said, okay. My mom had just passed away from COVID under circumstances that were very difficult. We hadn't been able to touch her or see her for months. And she died in isolation. So it was a lifeline for me. It saved my life. I was all broken up and angry and confused about everything. That's how I was introduced to mind-body medicine. And I realized through the work that I held a lot of pain in my heart, in my body, about the passing of my mother. Not the fact everybody has to make the transition to the next world. It was about how it happened. I learned to celebrate the life she lived rather than be remorseful about how she passed away. This was a paradigm shift for me. And once I had that realization, and I'm going to share a quick story of when I had that realization. I was in group, and I had made a drawing of my biggest problem, which was how my mother passed away, and I was showing the picture to the group, and I kept saying, me this, she that, and somebody said, "What's her name?" I said, "What? You interrupted me?" She said, "Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what?" I said, "Whose name?" "It's your mother's name." I said, "Oh, her name is Rambod Hashemi." And when I said that, everything changed. I said, "That's not my mother who I'm talking about. My mother was a lioness who was an upholder of the rights of women in Iran. That's what she stood for. I said, this narrative that I've created is all about me. How I obviously miss her presence in my life. But I began celebrating her, the life she lived, the life she gave me. So my grief turned to praise. That saved my life. How? I was less angry at home and at work. I lost 70 pounds over the course of this time. And now, as a certified practitioner, I've worked with groups of women in Iran. I've worked with groups of women in Afghanistan. And I tell you something, it is the first time in my life that I've gained such a meaningful and purposeful connection to my Persian heritage. Because growing up in America, in the Midwest, I was very ashamed of my Persian heritage, right? Oh, kids would come over to my house, I'd tell my family, don't speak Farsi, it's an embarrassment, right? We're Americans, you know. While it was a positive thing to embrace and be proud of being American, it was also a process of de-identification with my Persian heritage. This brought me back. This gave me that for the first time. The work is transformative for me, as it is, the process is transformative for those who have gone through this process with me. It has made me much more successful in my personal life. My wife and kids say, you're a different person. My wife told me just this morning, I was brushing my teeth, and she came up to me, looked in the mirror at me, she said, who are you? I said, what do you mean? She says, no, this is actually not the man I even married. I love the man I married, but wow, you're much more than that now. She says, do you see that? I said, I'm not sure I do. She says, well, I want you to see it, because we're very happy. When a wife says that to a husband, you know, she's not mincing words. She was very honest, and it touched my heart. At that moment I said, well, that's the proof in the pudding is right there. I have a ways to go, right? This is an ongoing process, lifelong process, but I'm grateful to it, and that's what I want. That's the feeling I want for other Iranian men. Because we come from a very unique background where there's a lot of patriarchy, there's a lot of authoritarianism in the way we're brought up. Even if we're brought up in this country, we're brought up in an Iranian home, right? And there are some cultural proclivities that are associated with that. Some that I've embraced, others that I've shed. This work has helped me do that, and I want that. I want to create that space for others, because that's a true kind of liberation from slavery. And I felt it in my life, I feel it in my life, and I want that. But it's been interesting because I've worked with more women than men. The response I've received from the women that I've worked with in Afghanistan and in Iran, we wish we could get our husbands involved in this process, because they saw me cry in front of them. They're like, some of them said, we've never seen a man cry. I could go on because this work is very dear and near to my heart, and it saved my life. It saved my marriage. My boys respect me. They say, you know, our dad is, they tell me, they say, you are someone we're proud of. You're taking care of yourself, you're taking care of others. And now my boys want to learn Farsi. And I think that's a testament to them seeing that I'm not ashamed. Not only am I not ashamed of my Persian heritage, I'm proud of it. This you know, there's something very valuable in this. And now they're curious. And I have to say this, it's really exciting. I saw my teenage boys doing breath work with their friends. I was walking by, they were having a study group. One of the young men who was there was agitated about something. There was an argument that broke out in the group. And I overheard my son saying, these things happen. Let's take a moment. Let's take some deep breaths. In through the nose, out through the mouth. And I realized he's been listening to me as I do this work. And he's picked it up. And he's incorporated it in his life. And I asked him, I said, what prompted you to do that? He said, because that's what you do to people. You help them breathe and oxygenate their bodies and stimulate the vagus nerve. He used those terms. I'm a proud dad. I would say, given what's happening in Iran today, facilitating these groups, I guess it carries an additional layer of meaning for me. As people continue to struggle for dignity and independence, this work makes me feel connected to them in a quiet but real way. Even offering a moment of calm, a moment of presence, or inner steadiness feels like an act of solidarity. I can't be there with them in the streets. So it's an honor to be able to bring a measure of hope and peace to the hearts and minds of my fellow Iranians. On another level, they're under a lot of stress right now. And it's not just emotional, it's not just economic, it's not just spiritual, it's all pervasive. We often talk about resilience, right, in the business community. We talk about resilience of the supply chain, resilience of business systems. But you know what? People can be in the best system and not be resilient. People can be in the worst system and be resilient. And I think that is the common denominator, regardless of what one's outward life situation is like. If I can bring that level of resilience, measure of resilience to my fellow Iranians, it's an honor. I think of the future. I would love to do this work in Iran one day, in person. That's my hope, that's my dream. Because what we're doing in this work is not one-on-one. We're training thousands to help themselves and help tens of thousands of others. So it is a paradigm shift in terms of teaching self-care to people.